Hello and welcome to Relatable Code. In this video, we will talk about classes in Kotlin. So let's get started. Now, before diving into the concept of classes in Kotlin, I want to show you an existing limitation in our system. Okay, remember when we were dealing with lists and we talked about having a list of books? Well, in that case, each book was only represented by its title. Well, what if we want to represent a book by more than that? What if we want a book to have its own title, its own author, maybe its own number of pages, so that really each one of our books can have a separate identity in our system? We can do that in Kotlin with the help of classes, and I'll show you how to implement one. Okay, so we want to define a way to present this type of information for a book. The type of information we want, maybe the title. We may want the author as well, in addition to the number of pages of this book. Okay, we want all these variables to reference a book in our system. And the way we can do that is by creating a class for this book. And we can do it like this. So we write class book and open our curly braces. Now we want a variable for the title. We can do that like var title equals empty string. We can have another one for the author, like var author, also another empty string, and one for the number of pages. We can write it like this: var number of pages equals to 0. But what good does this do? Now, every time we want to reference a book in our code, we have to create a book that can consist of these properties in mind. Okay, so our book now doesn't only have a title, which was represented by the string previously. Now each one of our books has a title, an author, and a number of pages variable. Okay, so now our book has a certain presentation with predefined variables. Okay, so we know that every instance of the book in our system will contain a certain title, a certain author, and a certain number of pages variable. And that's great. So now we have this presentation, or what we call a blueprint for the book. And as you know, let's talk in the context of construction workers. In order to build a house, construction workers will need a certain blueprint for that house in order to know how to build it. And the same applies to classes. Classes are blueprints, essentially. This is a blueprint for a book. So now I know how to create this book. Okay, and the way I create a reference for this book, I can do that in my main method like this. I can write var book equals book. Okay, so what we previously wrote for the class was just a blueprint so that we can know how to create one of these books in our system. And how we actually create them, we need to initialize a value for this book. Okay, so we defined a variable, we named it book, and it will have a basic value of book in this case. Okay, and we can now access the variables inside this book, and I'm talking about the title, the author, and the number of pages as well. We can do that like this. I can now do something like print line book dot title. Let's give our book a default title initially. So let's call this, I don't know, I'm not really good with names. default title. And we can now comment out the previous code that we wrote in the previous videos. And we can run our main function now. Let's do that. So I ran my main function. And now, as you can see in the output, I have default title. So the title variable inside this book was referenced in my code, and it was accessed on this value. Okay, that was the default value for the title in our case. Well, what if we want to change that? We can definitely do it like this. We can write book dot title equals my new title, and I can run that again. And here we can see my new title. Okay, this is one of the true powers of classes. You can create these classes, and you can manipulate the variables inside these classes. Okay, depending on the requirements of your system. This is a very, very important advantage that you have, and you will see a lot of these classes, maybe in every video that we create in the future. Okay, and that's basically it for variables, if you want, for classes. Okay, so you have to pay attention. What we did here didn't essentially create a book for us in our system. It just told our system what we need for this book with respect to variables, with respect to everything that can reference this book. Okay, the way we created this class was here. Okay, and that's basically the difference between a class and an object. Okay, so the object is the actual implementation of our class, because if we leave our class like that, we basically didn't take advantage of that class. And we can take advantage of it by creating an object which we can then manipulate as we need by maybe changing the value of its variables, maybe by calling some functions in this class. And that's something we can do. We can do that like this. I can create a function inside this class, so I can say something like fun set title, and here I can pass the new title, which will be included in this book. Okay, so I can name something like input title. This will be of value string, just like our title in the book. And here we can change the value of the book's title to the new title. And we can do it like this. We can write title equals input title, just like that. Okay. So now we can leverage this function in our main function code, and we can do it like this. Okay, so instead of writing book.title equals my new title, we can now write book.setTitle, and we can now pass a new title here. We can write my new title too. Let's comment out our initial title, book.title, and rerun this function. Let's do this. And we have an error. That's really weird. Platform declaration clash. The following declarations have the same JVM signature. Okay, that's something that can happen here because by default, when you want to change the value of title, a set title function is already defined for this class. Okay, that happens by default. So by default, you have a set title function and you have a get title function. And I'm glad you saw this error so that you can pay attention in the future when you want to really name your functions. You need to pay attention to this because by default, the name of your variables will be reflected in the name of the functions that will be generated. And what I mean by that is, for example, here we have title. So by default, a set title function is already defined as soon as you create this class and you create this variable. Okay, so here you can write just something like set new title, and in our code we can change set title to set new title. Let's rerun our application. This time it will compile, and it did indeed, with my new title too. Okay, that was planned. Let's say it was planned. So that's something you need to pay attention to when using classes. And you might ask, why did I create a function called set new title? Why didn't I just use this book.title equal my new title? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you can use book.title to get the value of this title, and you can use that to change the value of this title as well. As you can see here in the print line function, we're accessing the title variable inside our book. Okay. If we also write book.title equal new title, that will make it a little harder when we want to maybe debug our code in the future. Maybe we have some errors related to this title. And in our case, we would have a lot of title references in our code, basically because we're using the title variable to get the book title through book.title and change the value of this title through book.title equal my new title. Whereas if you use set new title, you can make sure that every time you use this method, you're not accessing the value of title in our book, you're changing its value. Okay, and that's really important to note. So let's change this and just keep our code as it is. Okay, and that was basically an introduction to classes for Kotlin. Okay, I hope you know now why we need these classes. So our book in our previous code was just a simple string, which was not sufficient because we need to know more information about this book because we need to change this information and make use of it in our system. Maybe we want to display the title of this book. Maybe we want to display the title and the author of this book. Okay, there are lots of stuff that you can do here with this book. And I hope you grasp the basic fundamentals of classes in this video. Okay, so a class is basically a blueprint for an object that we can create in our system like this. And that's basically the concept of object-oriented programming, or as we call it, OOP. So object-oriented programming is basically a concept that revolves around the creation of objects in your systems and the manipulation of these objects in a way that they interact with each other so that your system can properly function. Okay? So, if you like this type of content and you find my content relatable, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you in the next video.